I'm still working on this, on my promised first technical episode. But after a conversation with a friend of mine yesterday, I realized I really should show more of what we're up to, that anybody who's concerned about not having their house burned down in a wildfire can start paying some attention to. You may recall this bank that was covered in all these dead vines underneath this stuff. We're going to strip this whole bank all the way to where the mock orange starts, and then out here in this direction out to here. And then when you look up above, I mean, it should be pretty obvious if we had a fire anywhere that was kicking off embers, maybe even a fire like 2 or 3 miles away, like what happened in the Pacific Palisades fire. An ember that fell into here would probably set this entire hillside on fire and take the house with it. But let me show you what we've been up to up here. This is kind of overwhelming. We cut out this grove of bamboos. We've carved our way up to here. So this is all mostly palm fronds. We're going to clear all this out. And then we get to this right here. Doesn't this look like fun trying to get through this? Well, yeah, it's going to be a hell of a lot of work, but we're going to do it because the alternative is just too nasty to think of. We are going to do a sprinkler system. I am doing, I'm putting a bunch of cameras up so I can monitor things, control the system remotely to soak down the area around the house and some of the perimeter. As I say, 90% of the houses that burn in a typical wildfire burn because of embers. And they light the leaf litter on fire, and the next thing you know, your house is burning. So cleaning your gutters, not having any leaves on your roof, having your soffits covered with a mesh so sparks don't get into your attic. So this is a big piece of what we're doing this year. I'm doing all the electronics, doing the sprinkler system, doing the, I've installed a signature solar, an 18K PV all-in-one inverter, and a wall mount battery, using those to power the sprinkler system, my energy management system, which I'll be covering in the next video, and monitoring cameras. So this is our uninterruptible solar. And if you're interested in Firewise and being able to protect your home with that, you don't need to watch my videos. There's a lot of good videos, especially I got a lot of really good information from the Marin County videos. They're doing a pretty remarkable job, and I recommend you take a look at those videos. Firewise alone would increase the chances of your house surviving tremendously. So, if this stuff is of interest to you, then yeah, sure, like and subscribe, blah, blah, blah. Honestly, I don't care whether people like and subscribe or not. What I care about is your comments. I would like to hear from you. I would like to hear what you're doing, what you think should be done, what you'd like to see, your good ideas. I mean, everything I'm doing, I'm learning off of YouTube from other people. So I'm just trying to contribute to that knowledge base to help people that want to protect their home a little better. Doesn't require that you do everything that we're doing, and certainly there's a lot of things that people would do that is quite different. I understand that. If we do it effectively here, you can kind of do it effectively anywhere. This jungle fights you constantly. I mean, everything grows here. You drop a popsicle stick on the ground, is likely to sprout and grow. So it's a battle, and I haven't won yet, but I'm working on it. So if you're interested, please tell me about your project or what you would like to see, or what you're doing, or the better ways of doing it. I think when we get more into the technical stuff, perhaps there'll be more folks that are interested in telling me how stupid my ideas are. There's also some good ways that I can connect into our local emergency services, so that I can get warnings that will trigger automations. I can control all this with my smartphone. And that's certainly something I want to show everybody how we're doing. I think there's some value in that. I don't think it's wise for you to be planning on, in the event you have a wildfire close to you, staying and fighting it. And but I can monitor our house from anywhere with a cell phone, and I can control our power systems, our sprinklers, everything from anywhere that I have cell coverage. So that's what we're working on. And if I were going to give you one piece of advice, the first thing I would say is pay attention to Firewise. And as I showed off in my last video, you can find all kinds of pictures online of houses that survived a wildfire. And if you get to see a before picture of the house, you can pretty much tell somebody implemented Firewise. Either they implemented Firewise on purpose, or it just happened to be that that's the way they like their landscaping. They like it to be nothing really close to the house, or succulents perhaps, but certainly not some flammable plant that sheds leaves and creates leaf litter right next to the house. And then from 6 feet away from the house on out to maybe 30 feet, they keep things pretty well trimmed and limb up the trees so that if a fire starts underneath it, it won't have low-lying limbs that are, low-lying dead limbs to catch fire and light the whole tree on fire. Basically, it's just maintenance. I think I've kind of got you up to date on the landscaping stuff we're doing here. Now, here's a little intro to the technical stuff, which is coming, I promise. But anyway, so I've been working on this fire hazard and outage mitigation project here at my house in Maui and at my shop on the mainland for the last 2 years. And a big part of this project is the Firewise changes, and we've talked about that. It's mostly landscaping. And, I did a previous video on it, and there's this current video. But as I just said, there's tons of information on Firewise online, mostly on YouTube. And that's where I got my information. So if you need more explanation, that'd be a great place to start. On the technical side, I'm reworking how we use solar and battery storage to deal with outages and emergencies. In the process of experimenting with Home Assistant as an energy management system, which it makes a really good energy management system, I kind of stumbled onto a way to make solar and battery storage much more efficient and useful. And while it's a little dense technically, the core premise is pretty simple. And it's pretty much what experienced off-grid homeowners have been doing for decades. But I made it more efficient and effective and automatic. I'm a really crappy coder. I'm not, and trust me, I'm not being modest. I've worked with people who are good. I can't do what they do. I write unmanageable spaghetti that even I can't figure out a week after I get it working. I'm going to include code samples, but I'm cleaning it up with AI, specifically ChatGTP and Perplexity running the DeepSeek model and some other AI tools. And I'm not going to get into that. That's just, you can get that elsewhere. But even with AI help, the objectives and process of what I'm doing I think is more likely to be useful than my amateur YAML and C++. People with even less technical prowess than I have currently can use the objectives and the process to improve their solar systems even without automation. And I'm going to suggest that to some folks. And there's some simpler ways to do the automation. I'm going to cover that briefly, but mostly I'm going to focus on my really weird over-the-top approach. You have my apologies for that, but it's what I'm doing that actually works. And I'm doing it in my own inimitable, somewhat crappy way. So the system objectives are creative, that I want to create critical resilience. Okay, resilience is a great word for this effort because it doesn't suggest that we're eliminating risk. We're not. That would be crazy expensive. I mean, we'd have to build a firehouse next door or something like that. And it probably wouldn't work anyway. Firewise doesn't guarantee your home won't get burned if a wildfire rolls through. But what that and the systems I'm building do is reduce that risk by a huge amount. And it's practical, even from a maintenance standpoint. We're attacking the low-hanging fruit. So we can reduce the risk a lot with a relatively small cost. Now, what I'm doing here in Maui is probably not what anybody would consider a relatively small cost, but this is the worst case. I mean, I'm fighting a jungle that wants to grow stuff everywhere as fast as it can and take over. So that's not cheap. But this is what critical resilience means. We want to maintain a battery reserve for outages. So that probably seems obvious, but most people accomplish that by building bigger systems that can handle their maximum load for the longest outage. That might seem completely reasonable, but it's expensive and there's no upper limit. I mean, you can just, if you don't start paying attention to how you use power, you just be using a lot for no particular value. Let me give you an example that is manual. What we're doing is managing the load rather than just increasing the supply. And actually, we're doing both, but we're not doing it by adding more equipment, more battery, more solar. Not to a huge degree, anyway. If you were sitting at a dashboard that showed all the loads in your house, and you could see that 3 major loads are running, 2 water heaters and a pool filter recirc pump. And while you have good solar pumping in, sundown is coming in about 4 or 5 hours, and the solar isn't enough for all 3 loads. The battery is supplying half the load. State of charge is down to 55%, which you can see on your little panel. And the National Weather Service says there's a big storm coming. So It'd be nice to have a battery be full or close to full. So you shut down the pool pump because you can run the pool pump anytime, right? It's a recirc pump that filters the water. If it goes a day without it, it's not the end of the world. But you've still got two water heaters running. Both of them are sitting at 126 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's because you treat your water heaters as a storage facility. You know, you've got the thermostat cranked up to, say, 130, 135, because you're storing that excess solar. So you don't need to do that anymore. You know, that's not you can't get the power back out of that, but you can get hot water out of it for a long time because your heaters are well insulated, right? So you're storing hot water to use as hot water. So you back the thermostats down to 120 degrees Fahrenheit, and you just charge your battery with the remaining solar. That's the only significant load that's on it, and so it's charging the battery as fast as you can do it. That's nice if you're there sitting there watching everything all the time. But hey, you know, and you can do things that way if you don't have the technical chops to use Home Assistant to do it automatically. But we're going to show you 3 ways to do that with Home Assistant. 2 are more like normal Home Assistant use, and the 3rd one is unspeakably geeky, and it's what I'm doing because I think it'll work best for me. So you really want to prevent battery depletion during grid instability. So there are signals available from various agencies that the grid's going to be limited. So you take those signals, and the system then works predictively to ensure that important loads will be maintained. You know whether you're going to have sun tomorrow or not. And if your system knows that, if your system knows pretty much how much solar power it's going to have to work with, it can maintain your battery at a pretty high rate just by shifting loads around, by doing less storage of things like hot water and more storage of things like electricity in the battery. Okay, so that's really all we're talking about. When the system works predictively to ensure that important loads are maintained, and it shifts to a critical load management when an emergency or an outage happens. And all the solar that's available gets used to best effect. And it does that all the time. It always makes sure that the solar is getting used to best effect, either by storing it as heat in the hot water heaters or getting things done while there's solar available, but also by keeping the battery fully charged. Another big objective is to optimize self-consumption. You might, depending on what kind of solar system you've already got, you might have a net metering agreement, or you're selling power to the utility. Your power generation is not just the cost of power, not the value of it, I mean. It's worth whatever your monthly electric bill comes to, divided by however many kilowatts you use. You're paying more for electricity than you really understand, probably, unless you understand a little bit of accounting and you do some checking and tracking. Everything about the grid has to be considered if you're grid connected. Everything about that grid needs to be considered when you're buying power instead of making it. And I don't want to have to make those decisions constantly every 15 minutes. So I automated it. So depending on where you're located, you can reduce peak imports. Time shifting may be the best way for you to save money. Time of use isn't everywhere yet, and it might become rare as more utilities shift to supplying enormous 24/7 data center loads. That's where the money is. Your little contribution they can do without, especially as that stuff comes online. But if you have it, you want to use it. So we're going to show you how to automate that. You also need to avoid high demand simultaneous loads. Does that pool pump really need to run while your water heater needs to? And it's unlikely. You can just time shift when that runs. I know, you've got it set up on a timer so it starts in the morning and runs till sometime in the afternoon. I mean, that filter can run anytime. It doesn't have to run at a specific time. So but that load can also be managed the same way that water heaters are. View it as being storage. You're not home. The HVAC doesn't need to run. You're headed home. You want to cool the house off or warm it up. But if nobody's there, that doesn't need to run. So it's schedulable. Doesn't need to be simultaneous with other loads. You can manage it. And so you can just let them run, which is what people who are just saying, okay, well, we're just going to add more battery, more panels. Or you can build your systems to handle your largest loads and service those loads when other loads don't need to run. And battery life is a low priority for me. I'm just going to use it. The reality of battery life is age is probably the most important factor. When your battery is 10 years old, it's going to be producing less. You can't store as much, and it can't yield as much. But we can extend if everything else is running the way it needs to. Then we should manage these expensive resources as best we can, as long as it suits our needs. Otherwise, just use it. But that means we're going to limit the unnecessary charge and discharge cycles. You can just build this into the system and forget about it. If something changes, you can update a couple of parameters and meet the new requirement. It's not like you have to go around and physically change a whole bunch of timers and things. You just say, okay, this characteristic has changed. I'm going to change the way we manage the battery. And we're going to avoid deep discharge, except during outages. I mean, we have a lot more storage devices in a house than people realize. Obviously, your water heaters are heat storage. Your house itself, the temperature inside your house is a storage parameter. If you're spending money if you're spending energy to keep your house warm while nobody's home, then adding more generation to be able to be that wasteful is one option. That's up to you. It's your money, but there's other ways to do it. And so that's what we're working on. So what I'm going to show you in the next chapter is the structure, how we're building this home automation system, how we're implementing it. And I'm still in the implementation process here. So I'm going to be showing you some live stuff. It's not expensive, but you will have to learn some pretty difficult things to do it well. If you're already technical, if you already understand home automation, if you already understand wired and wireless and transmission protocols and telemetry, then you're going to look at this and go, wow, you could have done that better. So as always, I'm going to say this again, I'm a lot more interested in your comments than I am in whether you like these videos or subscribe. Although obviously if you subscribe to them, it'll be a little easier for you to follow along with what we're doing. And I don't do entertainment videos. These are low quality. I'm sitting in front of a camera. In the future, I'm going to be doing screenshots of code that I'm using, or screenshots of automations that I'm using, and video of my computer screen. Exciting. So if you're looking for entertainment, there's a lot of that out there. That's done way better than anything that I could or would do. But But we'll do our best to give you good information and make it as short as possible. Everything that I'm doing, I have a couple of websites that I built a long time ago. I don't use them much anymore, but they're good places to store information and screenshots and code and samples and stuff like that. So my website, the website that I'm going to use for this is ponostal.com. And if you go there, you'll find a lot of stuff on loosely related. I mean, I do a lot of things. So there's going to be a lot about motorcycles, a lot about engines, because I'm kind of into that. And there's no kind of. I've been doing that for 65 years. So yeah, I'm very into that. And it was all a bunch of people working on their own, collaborating together and sharing information. That's what Home Assistant is. That's what open system software is. And that's the reason why this is fairly cheap. You can buy a Raspberry Pi or dig an old computer out of your garage and load the free Home Assistant software on it, and you're good. You're set. I mean, you might spend $100 for a Raspberry Pi, or maybe a little more these days. It's essentially free, or damn close to it. A lot of the things that I'm doing, I'm spending a fair amount of money on because I want my systems to perform very well, to be easy for me to use, and to be extremely reliable. But you may not need that. So I kind of promised that I would do this as a recipe, and I'm to my best of my ability, I'm going to follow through on that promise. But don't look at what I'm doing as being a pure and simple blueprint. It's not a product. You can't just roll it out and turn it on. You're going to have to learn some shit. So sorry. Hopefully we're going to get you out of your comfort zone and you can dig into this stuff and build your system the way you want to build it. But every time I see somebody installing more and more inverters and batteries where they wind up with 6 inverters and 12 batteries and a couple and 20 kilowatts of solar, I wonder, what the hell are you supplying? What exactly are you just trying to run everything as poorly as you can? As you can probably tell by looking at me, I'm not into suffering. I'm not going to have cold water showers. Your hot water heater is a storage device. People have been using them as a dump load for decades, which makes some sense if you have surplus solar and not enough battery. But it makes a lot more sense as part of a larger plan to size the equipment that you need if you run your home or business efficiently. This is what we're doing. That was a reasonable introduction to what our technical stuff is going to be about. If you're not technical, you'll probably find the next video pretty boring. But I'll do the best I can to make it short, if nothing else.